Hey everybody, this tutorial is part one of creating what's called a rough for your painting. A rough is basically just a thumbnail that's a little bit more detailed, and the beauty of working digitally is that you can just grab various sources and kind of in a very ugly way cut and paste them, slap them together. And then you can do whatever you want from there. You can do a grid or whatever. So here I'm using Google Earth, and I just typed in New York City, and just zooming in, getting down. There's the Statue of Liberty, and just showing some different views here. You can see that got some controls up there on the right. Google Earth is free and allows you to move around here. My philosophy is if I can get it on my screen, I can take a screenshot and use that as reference. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to take 3 different screenshots and just show you some possibilities. Here's the first screenshot, just kind of an aerial view of Manhattan. Next, I'm going to get a little bit closer, try to get more towards the building level so that it doesn't look so much like we're looking from outer space, which Google Earth has a tendency to do. So I'm just trying to pan around in between some of the buildings here. I like this view. I think I'll take a screenshot of that. And what I'm going to do again is just use this as reference within my work. Now when you get all the way down to the street level in Google Earth, it will switch to a street view, and you'll see that it gives me even the people that were crossing the street. It's very detailed. It's a little distorted. It's kind of a weird lens on their little Google car, but it's kind of a cool shot. So I thought I'd take that. It's kind of a cliche perspective street corner, complete with pretty weird warping going on. So I took those 3 screenshots, and I'm just gonna open those in Photoshop. And again, I'm not gonna do anything really rendered or finished in Photoshop at all. Just gonna give you some basic ideas. One of the things that we do a lot is plate painting. I don't think you can pull off a plate painting with Google Earth images. I just think the quality isn't quite there. You could use this, and like here's an example. You could trace it. You could trace the perspective and just kind of find your buildings, and maybe if I don't want this specific building, I can use it as a reference to kind of add on to it or make it futuristic or whatever. What I'm doing in this example is I'm just kind of nicking the perspective a little bit. Again, I could use a perspective path and find the actual perspective, but I think this is close enough. Just going to make a huge killer robot, which is something I do a lot in my work, not because that's what I want to do all the time. Just it's an easy example of, this is what you can do in a plate painting. So I'm just making it really boxy to find the perspective. Add some arms and legs, and then I'll just kind of render it out a little bit. Try to do a little bit of foreshortening with his hand. It's coming at us. I made his feet really large. Just trying to exaggerate the perspective the way it is on the right side with that building because of this weird Google camera. If I were to really be invested in this painting, I would take a lot more time with the perspective, but rather than focus on matching the quality of the image, I'm just kind of focusing on the perspective right now, and this would just be a quick sketch layer, nothing major. So this is, like I said, this is a process that I use a lot in my art. I don't really use Google Earth too much. I mean, I guess it's really good for if you really need to be on location with your work, and you can get street level practically anywhere in the world, and it's a good idea to just change up your scenery a little bit. And I think this would help you get some variety within your background, so you're not always drawing the same building over and over again. And again, I would draw over that plate and kind of compose the whole thing. Now, what I do with my work is, if I'm happy with this rough, a lot of times I'll just put a grid on it and just kind of start from scratch and draw that out. Some people like to put filters and all kinds of crazy things on the plate to make it kind of blend in a little bit more and look less photographic, so they don't have to redraw that. But I consider that a little bit of cheating a little bit, I think, just taking the photo and using it. Unless, of course, you're doing some kind of design that needs to be fast, and the idea is more about the design of the vehicle or whatever, not as much the background. I like to focus on more of a complete painting. So part one will be Google Earth and just how to use that artistically for your work. Part two is going to be how to use either a Google Earth or a 3D model from Google SketchUp to import that into your own photo plate within Photoshop. And the whole reason for doing either one of these steps is camera angles and perspective. This way you can kind of control the camera, you can control the perspective, you can control the angle before you commit. And now I don't have to spend my time worrying about a horizon line of vanishing points. I can just go with it and kind of use those buildings as a visual cue for creating my perspective. So I'm just kind of drawing some kind of random future looking helicopter vehicle. Didn't want to get too bogged down in design, but I wanted to show you like what kind of application this would be used for. And this would definitely be a sketch layer. I'm just sketching in real rough with lines and doing 1 or 2 passes at that. Typically I would probably do about 4 or 5 passes and reduce the opacity of the layer, and then just get tighter and tighter with each pass. I preach to my students to work from a silhouette, but I find myself lately just kind of starting with a line drawing, just a quick rough. Here I'm just kind of putting in this solid circle for the top blade, rotary thing, whatever that's called, because I just want to make sure I had the right perspective going on here. I want to be able to transform that and make it go away. Again, I don't think I do a very good job with these blades. I would definitely use some reference if this was for real. I was curious that I thought, well, maybe I can do like a radial blur, and I wasn't thinking I'd already put it in perspective. But what I would do doing this is I would draw the blade on a separate layer at a 90-degree perspective, put the blur on it, and then I would transform it into that 3D space. So I got the robot and the helicopter, and this one is more of an aerial view. I just thought that this would be good for some sort of comic thing. So I started to like add some things in here, like you could actually manipulate the city if you were making some sort of post-apocalyptic thing that's really popular, or I just made some sort of rope bridge between buildings. Here on the corner I'm just kind of drawing in a building and showing you how I can add that perspective pretty easily just by using the cues from the other things, lining up with the road and stuff. I just got rid of that stuff just as an example. I like to fade the background out so I can focus on the drawing. Just do like a quick sketch here of Superman flying over the city. I think, you know, in the big picture of comic book drawing, if you were to draw a picture of Superman flying over a city like this, it would take forever with a pencil, a comic board, and ink and brush. A lot of the early Superman comics, the buildings are remarkably simplistic. So, and later on, artists like Jim Lee, they just kind of spent a lot of time on the buildings. Some artists will use SketchUp, and it's pretty sad in a way. It's obvious that they use SketchUp or Google Earth, and then make very little effort from that point to manipulate it. I don't want to say hide it. There's nothing wrong with using these tools to make that rough. And for me, in my opinion, if you're making it rough, you're fine. It's legit. You're not stealing from anybody. This is not copyrighted photos. You are creating this. And even with SketchUp, if someone puts something on 3D Warehouse, even though they created the model, you know, they are sharing it. So there's no copyright expectation there. And also, like, if it's a 3D model, you're only using a 2D image of that, and you are technically creating that 2D image. So I think in all of those respects, you're safe. For me, it's just an artistic thing of, you know, I'm fine with using this for my rough, but when I do a painting, I want to sit and actually do a painting from start to finish. It's kind of nice to have these things on separate layers. What happens is when you work this way, you kind of create these cardboard cutouts. So here I'm just going to use a gray brush, and I'm going to fill all three of these sketches in just with a gray background, so you do not see the city behind them. So obviously Google SketchUp, or I'm sorry, Google Earth is ideal for exterior spaces. When you start working with interior spaces, you're probably better off with SketchUp, which will be part 2. Here I'm just throwing in some gray, kind of mask out that sketch. And this composition is really bad. I would have to, you know, drawing it, I would have to create some sort of fog or something just to kind of help some of these things pop. My robot here. Of course, color and all that stuff isn't accurate. These are just quick little sketches. So that will do it for part 1. Hopefully this helps, and stay tuned for part 2, which will be Google SketchUp.